That was big talk of the town in 2014. Suddenly, the Office of Personnel Management was hacked in December. Down the line, 5 months later, Hillary Clinton appears in court and they tell her, hey, you're going to hand over your emails. A couple days after that, the now fired, corrupt, leaking former IG of the State Department, Linick, had requested from our elected officials to give him a big fat budget to create his own personal IG of the State Department server.
How convenient.
Very convenient.
While we have no evidence that our data has been compromised, the fact that the contents of our network makes us by large numbers of department administrators puts us at unnecessary risk. The IT folks at the department have the keys to our IT system, so they really have access, unfettered access to the system if they wanted to. They could read, modify, delete. They could read, modify, delete. I would like to be completely separate from the department to ensure the integrity of our system, but I also need the department to give us access to the same systems that we have now. Give us access.
And he was responsible in releasing her emails that he gave in little doses, of course, over time. But at the same time, the press came out with a report, oh dear, months ago, there was a leak.
Do you have evidence that the State Department's network has been attacked? And does that affect you guys?
There's evidence that has been attacked and it has affected us. I can't really go into details because of the nature of the information.
For people that don't know, the Office of Personnel Management usually has information on every single American that has applied for any type of clearance. So if you applied for like a White House press pass or joined the military or an admin job that could require something like a public Charlie clearance, anything, all your information is there.
What could they do with all of that information?
Right. They started slowly creating these memorandums of understandings with your secretaries of states and attorney generals secretly behind your back, providing facial recognition data, private identifying data. This was the most incredible data, because if you want to control someone, all you need to do is put that information through a couple of systems and you'll know exactly what buttons you need to push and how to make them nod their head the way you want them to or shake it.
Millions of Americans have received letters like this, notifying them their data are at risk and referring them to a government-contracted credit monitoring agency.
Does this correlate with predictive programming?
Yes.
The merging of John Brennan's tactical intelligence and General Jones's operational capabilities gave birth to ClearForce.
ISI was the relational database component of it. That's what we named it. I named it, actually. And
what did you name it ISI for?
I like the iPhone, Psi for psychological warfare.
Okay.
Right? You have the component where you need to be able to collect all this information, and then you need to be able to collaborate this information with a team of an unspecified amount of analysts and or other legal people that will be looking at stuff. And you need to be able to provide the leadership of a tactical operation. You need to be able to provide them what's called a COPS, a common operational picture, right? So this provides people at the top common operational picture of all the different assets. Assets can be journalists, it could be an entire news organization, it could be a podcast, it could be just an individual YouTube influencer. It could be anybody like that. And you would either build them from scratch or contract them out. Just bring them online.
According to Berge, the 2012 changes to the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012 opened the floodgates for domestic IIA, social media influence operations. Do you think that some of these smart devices were created in order to gain access to the public by the military-industrial complex?
I know that the iPhone really was released within this, if not the same month of the IIA policy letter, right? I know for a fact, and you can easily look it up, that the Smith-Mundt Act, Modernization Act, was modified to allow for the influence, dissemination of propaganda to Americans, which had previously been restricted or prevented by the Smith-Mundt Act in the late 40s when it was put into place. When they modernized that, they took away those protections, allowing it to adapt for social media. And then within a few months or just a very short period of time, they came out with the Obama phone.
Everybody in Cleveland, low minority, got Obama phone. Keep Obama in president, you know? He gave us a phone.
Free cell phones to low-income families.
TrackPhone has just started a program here in the volunteer state called SafeLink Wireless. More than 800,000 families here in Tennessee qualify for these phones. The company says this program is about providing a safe link for families no matter what their level of income is.
Very short time after that, they added free unlimited data plans to them.
He also suggested that the contiguous release of the Obama phone with an unlimited data plan played a significant role in fostering the Ferguson riots using IAA.
Burn it, bitch, down! Burn it, bitch, down! Burn it, bitch!
So why do you
Think of
think
the
they were
damage.
targeting them for collection purposes?
Think of what you could do, right? Think of how easily you could start a riot in Cleveland if you had the data. Oh my goodness. the
So
things
you
could
could
do.
gather that information and know how to psychologically target them to get them upset, or, you know, do you think that they were pushing information to them, like tailoring their
I would.
viewpoint on social media?
I
even?
would. And when like I said, I didn't really actually finish this earlier, but I originally, in 2014, I recognized Black Lives Matter movement during the Michael Brown riots as being influenced by IIA. A colleague of mine in South Korea did a trace route on it, trace routed the source of the what I believe to have been IIA to Ukraine. That's funny, right? So, because Ukraine just always keeps popping up. And whether or not it was actually the Shadownet itself, or it was a competitor like McChrystal, right? McChrystal, what they accused McChrystal of having is the exact same thing as what we built before him. Maybe it was a competitor. Who knows? It's becoming really a boutique market.
Do you think that many of these social media companies like Twitter, Facebook, that they were created with IIA operations in mind, and it was never intended to be a free speech platform? I mean, what's your take on that?
In our Shadownet flyer, it has a screenshot of South American social network site that was kind of like the predecessor for MySpace, owned by Google. And I believe the name was Urkut. And you can actually look on our flyer and see a screenshot from that, which looks like an active engagement from South America. Now, if you look up what happened to Urkut, what was really Google's first attempt pre-MySpace, you'll see that it was largely shut down and largely contributed to an overwhelming use of fake personas, right? What was one of the reasons that they attributed to MySpace shutting down last year? Rampant fake personas. At the same time, I'm developing these flyers for a company that doesn't have a sales staff. They only have a product. At the same time I'm doing that, our number one partner for a company that doesn't have a product, that is only salespeople, are working John McCain's campaign.
Too risky.
Doing micro-targeted social media for John McCain's campaign.
I'm John McCain, and I approve this message.
You were speaking on news pundits and how many of the news pundits are IA assets and intelligence assets. So tell us more about that.
Mika Brzezinski, her father is the father of influence operations and psychological warfare.
Sure. A towering figure in American foreign policy, an extended member of the NBC News family as well. Zbigniew Brzezinski, Jimmy Carter's national security advisor.
Jillian Turner, Fox News host, was also vice president of Jones Group International, doing an interview with her old boss and my old boss. Now, why would I assume that they would be using anything other than the Shadownet? Because The owner of the Shadownet has so many key assets, why would he need to go to anybody else, right? So they get their talking points from the analysts that are putting it together, but then they disseminate those talking points through non-attribution to their assets throughout these news organizations, utilizing an application like the Shadownet. Jillian Turner has a direct connection to Atlantic Council. General Jones was the chairman of the board of the Atlantic Council. JGI, Jones Group International, is an oil lobby. Atlantic Council and Burisma has a relationship. Burisma is an energy company. Obviously, they have these connections.
This would explain why Fox News focuses mostly on the Biden-Ukraine scandal, never mentioning Jones' connections, nor the Atlantic Council. Trump focusing on Ukraine isn't just about Biden. It's about Jones, Hayden, Brennan, McChrystal, the State Department, USAID, and corrupt inspector generals. With everything in place and after being in control of the office of the presidency for decades, the military-industrial complex had confidence they could take Trump out as a candidate or even as president. Has IIA been used against President Trump?
Absolutely. Through the Russian dossier, there are so many people, former colleagues of mine, directly connected to the Shadownet. John McCain and Lindsey Graham, one of the last two people to have their hands on the Russian dossier before it was handed off to BuzzFeed as part of the dissemination process.
Told the president it was not John McCain. I know because John McCain showed me the dossier.
It was built, it was a product, it was used as a weapon as part of an influence operation. It was fake information put into it to help create chaos and to influence an election. Bottom line, right? But those people that were directly involved with that were also directly involved with the Shadownet.
So you have knowledge of them using military-grade psychological warfare weapons on the president of the United States.
Done by the closest people around him, too.
As Trump's election unfolded and as all of the Russia collusion and all these things started happening and becoming exposed, revealed to me, it was to keep from exposing the stuff that they've been doing over here, which I believe includes the Maidan massacre in Ukraine.
Where did the dossier come from? Nellie Orr testified it came from Ukraine. Where's all the money laundering and crazy IIAs we see going on in Ukraine?
So Manafort's being accused of social media influence operations in Ukraine in 2010. World courts charged him with that.
Ukraine was the epicenter of everything, like everything. And that's because we had maimed that nation and made them kneel to us. Barack Hussein Obama did it. You know, we deployed troops, National Guard, of course. And what states are the ones that work with Ukraine? It would be California and New York. So we deployed troops there because, you know, they weren't listening. It's like, why would you want to stay independent and hang out with the Russians when you can be with us, the Americans and the Europeans? And they were really upset that they weren't willing to commit to receive debt from the EU and ignore Russia, which they had been attached to for eons. So we went in there and destroyed them. That's how Hunter Biden got his job. That's how we eased our way in there. We got a hold of corrupt people. We said, we'll help you out with your lawsuits. You get us in there. We wrote bills. We sent them money so we can help them conduct elections. We did everything there.
The Obama aid package in Ukraine, which corresponds with Joe Biden's billion-dollar loan guarantee scandal, is the same aid package where Seidel got a field office in Kiev to provide election training and election management for the Ukrainian Election Commission. Seidel is one of the most notorious outsourced companies for elections, with regular electronic voting machine problems, who also tabulate our election results in cloud services in Europe, aka servers outside the United States. A whistleblower leaked to me in 2019 internal documents from Seidel that appeared to show meddling in the Kentucky election.
Atlantic Council has been deciding America's policies for decades now. And look at what a panic they were in when Trump made that phone call to Ukraine. They went into absolute panic mode. 75% of the people testifying were all directly connected to General Jones, McCain, and Atlantic Council.
The now IG of the NSA, literally with his wife, created the National Anti-Corruption Bureau in the Ukraine in 2009. They created it.
Robert Storch is the deputy head of the U.S. Inspector General's office.
Це пан Сторч. По скайпу є зв'язок у нас?
I recognize how important this task is for NABU and for the effort to address corruption there in Ukraine.
September 30th, 2016. Obama knows that within 30 days, if the NSA can't fix the overcollection problem by either dumping data or justifying having it, the FISA court will order the IG of the NSA to investigate. So what does Obama do? He writes an executive order that makes the IG of the NSA a presidential appointment rather than an appointment by the director of the NSA. November 30th, 2016. Obama nominates Robert Storch, working as deputy IG of the DOJ under Horowitz at the same time.
I'm Rob Storch, and I'm honored to serve as the Inspector General at the National Security Agency.
During the transition period from the Obama administration into the Trump administration, Storch appears to never have actually been confirmed by the Trump administration.
How did this guy get confirmed? Not one person asked, hey, have you ever worked for a couple months before they even had the hearing to see if he's going to be confirmed or not. Nobody asked him, hey, did you by any chance get an offer from the president of Ukraine to work for them? It was all over the media, but not one person asked. You know who else helped them set it up? Bill Taylor and George Kent, those two clowns, also testified against the president. One of them has supersonic hearing. They could hear phones that are not on speakerphone from across the room. So
that's odd. According to Tory, the alleged impeachment whistleblower was actually a wiretap, hence supersonic hearing capabilities. Eric Ciaramella was a decoy to hide the fact that the president was being wiretapped through a 702 data overcollection problem connected to the Sunset Clause, collection problem that the NSA Inspector General Robert Storch oversaw.
So the question is, what has been the Senate Intelligence Committee? All complacent, every single one of them. Because it's their job to be our voice and ask those questions. So
I mean, I guess
because they're in on it.
So I guess the question is, are they all just that inept? Or is there something else going on? Section 702 of the FISA Amendment Act of 2008 was created to stop illegal surveillance through data collection. It ends up being used as cover, providing the intelligence agencies front-facing legal access to unauthorized data, while turning a blind eye to private contractors having backdoor access to all data.
I had access through the administrative side platform, because I was one of the first on it, to be able to see all communications between people like Adam Schiff, Brennan, Feinstein's staffers, and General Jones, and many more that I don't want to say because I haven't publicized that yet, actually. Because there's foreign people. I did see communications of former GCHQ head Hannigan. And Robert Hannigan was part of the company at GSG, right? So I gave most of this information to Millie Weaver, and she put out a report. And even though I had legal access to all their communications, because I had my username and password, the minute she did that report, within just, I believe, almost instantaneously, the website was taken down and my access was revoked. They changed it. Well, it wasn't revoked. They just upheld the whole server. It was done. It was finished. They made it toast. I mean, that's what they do. But nothing ever really dies, really. Because the way they use their servers is by torrents, so all their information is hidden somewhere across the planet. Maybe we should look at some old articles that I put out on Hurricane Electric to find those servers and those little bits and seed them correctly. So, I mean, you'd be able to seed it with something like a keystone.
I want to ask you about John Brennan and the blackmail. So, who all did he have blackmail collected on? Any politicians?
You mean that I've seen?
Yes.
A lot of people. Yes.
And politicians?
Yes.
So, would you say there's any side more Democrats or more Republican, or is it kind of even?
Very even, Steven.
Okay, so once this blackmail was collected on politicians, what did they do with it?
Even Pelosi doesn't know that what they have on her. Neither does Blumenthal. Nobody. I can keep going down. I mean,
But do they know that these people have blackmail on them?
only if they've butted heads.
Okay.
So we saw a butting of heads between Murkowski, was it, and Feinstein, right? That's a butting of heads. That's where it's like, hey, we got this. You know where she put her up against the wall? Happens all the time.
Now you know how our government has been compromised. 24/7 surveillance mixed with blackmail. What's the significance of Cambridge Analytica being attached to Trump's campaign?
Everything that I saw with the description of like how Cambridge Analytica functioned, what they did, their app, the computer applications, everything that I saw with that, I would describe as just a later iteration of the Shadownet.
Was Cambridge Analytica, to your knowledge, an IAA operation?
Yes, it was. And I believe that it was so blatant because it was piloted at the same time that the RNC and the DNC were hacked. It was all formulated correctly.
I have said to you, it's all coming out, and the question is how.
I didn't conspire to leak Hillary's emails, and I have nothing to do with Russia. So,
yes.
The fact is, it looks like I did both.
Does it look like you did both?
If I wasn't me, I would say yes, that's what it looks like. I was part of the team running Obama's Facebook. We invented the way social media is used to communicate with voters.
This is how they were going to do it. You know, they were supposed to go in, they were supposed to sway him, because they were supposed to give up the goods to match the Russia hack.
Why would they be running an IAA operation that would be helping Trump win? Because that doesn't make sense when we know that General Jones is a Democrat and many of these people don't like Trump. So what gives?
Well, because then we just make it look like Russia was running the Cambridge Analytica program too.
And it admits to it right here. I am headed to Washington, D.C. for my testimony for the Mueller investigation. I definitely didn't think that while we're sitting there counting votes that some of those votes were made by people who had seen fake news stories paid for by Russia on their Facebook page.
So not only did they hack the DNC and the RNC, but nobody talks about that, right? Because we're only supposed to focus that Russia was hacking just the DNC, not the RNC. We keep forgetting about that. Because it was just information Brennan was getting. They wanted to get access. That's the way it goes. Anyway, Cambridge Analytica at the same time would be supposedly helping President Trump win. And the Russia collusion hoax would have stuck better because behind all those LLCs and the glitz and glamour, they would have had some statue of Vladimir Putin in a tutu waiting for you.
Yeah, I worked at Cambridge Analytica while they had Facebook data sets. went to Russia one time while I worked for Cambridge. I visited Julian Assange while I worked for Cambridge, pitched the Trump campaign, and wrote the first contract. I have an email from one of our senior data scientists that said that we were actually using Facebook-like data in our modeling. The methodology was considered a weapon, weapons-grade communications tactics. Well done, Britt. Looked quite tough, and you did okay with a winky face, little emoji.
When we found out that Cambridge Analytica reached out to WikiLeaks and said, hey, can we help? What that means is we've got a Russian intelligence operation underway to illegally influence the U.S. election in Trump's favor. And we've got the data firm paid by the Trump campaign offering operational help to that effort.
Are there any ties between Mr. Trump, you or your campaign, and Putin and his regime?
No, there are not. It's absurd, and there's no basis to it.
Cambridge Analytica was used to create the appearance that Russia conducted influence operations to help Trump win the 2016 election.
Stone, Manafort, Davis, McCain, Jones, all of these people have been doing this for, to my knowledge, a decade of my fact witness knowledge. They've been doing this for a decade prior to Trump even running for office. I met with Roger Stone. We were at his table at a speaking engagement that he did in Clearwater, Florida. And I asked Roger Stone at that time, did you work with, do you know Jim Jones? Did you work with Dynology? And he acknowledged his relationship and it's, yeah, sure. I did ask, I asked him flat out, I said, did you use the ShadowNet? Did you know about it? And he's like, no.
Stone, leaving the Trump campaign early on, suggests candidate Trump didn't want his campaign tied to Stone's influence operations.
We really pioneered negative campaign advertising.
Stone does have a reputation for political dirty tricks and influence operations.
I revel in your hatred, because if I weren't effective, you wouldn't hate me.
Manafort and Roger Stone go way back, like from the 80s. Come on.